Hello, 8th grade math. We are working on congruence, okay, which is going to be talking about looking at two triangles and them being congruent and what that actually means. Okay, before we start, I have a story for you. The other day I was walking by the funeral home outside of my house, and I was singing, on the sidewalk, and the funeral director could hear what I was singing, and he came over to me and stopped me and said that it was what I was doing was awesome, and that he would be really impressed if I would go and sing outside of the funeral home, to the public. And I asked him why, he wanted me to do that, and he said that it'd be good for business. So hear the ba-dum boom in the background. I'll let you guys figure out the joke behind that one. We have congruence, which is something I really enjoy, and it is not terribly difficult. So if we go to our vocab terms, we have two of them: correspondence and congruent figures. Now, correspondence is a way of matching. It's a way of matching up two sets of objects. And congruent figures are two objects that have the same size and the same shape. Okay, so correspondence is a way of matching up two sets of objects. Congruent figures have the same size and the same shape. Alrighty, so if we're looking at congruent figures here, and I've said that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And what that means is the first letter in each of them will match up. That means angle A and angle D are going to be congruent to each other. And then also B and E are going to match up because they're seconds. So that means these two are going to be the same. And then finally the last letters will match up, which means that C and F will be the same. But that also means the sides will be the same. So the side AB, okay, if side AB is 5, that means that side DE also has to be 5. Okay? And then BC down here will match up with EF here. So if this is 8, this has to be 8. And finally, the last side, if that's 12, that also has to be 12. Congruence means they match up, but they have to match up in order. So if angle A and angle D are the ones that are the congruent angles, they have to be first in the triangles. Okay? So let's start looking at a few examples. So we need to create a congruence statement, okay? Congruence statement, if I can spell. Congruence statement. So what we need to look at first is, are these triangles congruent? And we can only know that if the angles all match up and the sides all match up. So over here, I'm looking at angle L, and I'm thinking to myself, what is this going to be equal to? Well, I know that this is 90, so the rest of it has to be 90. And so 90 minus 23 is going to be 67. Therefore, angle L has to be 67 degrees. And over here, I know that 90 minus 67 is 23. So at least the angles match up. And the sides are already drawn for us. That means QR down on the bottom matches up with KM or MK. And then I also know that SQ matches up with KL. And down on the bottom, finally, we have ML matches up with RS. So I'm going to write the first triangle first. I'm going to say triangle, and I'm going to go KLM. KLM, that's our first triangle. And I'm going to use the congruent term, which is right there. This means congruent. I'm saying it's congruent to the other triangle, but I have to make sure the order's right. I went K first. That means the 23-degree angle. So I have to go Q. L second, that was 67, so that has to be S. And then finally, M was the last one. The right triangle on this one would be R. So my congruent statement is triangle KLM is congruent to triangle QSR. Now, if I did a different order on the first one, let's say I did triangle MLK, I could do that. On the other one, I would have to then do triangle R, because that was 90. L was a 67, so that's S, and Q is 23, which is there, okay? All that matters is that they match up, okay? So let's try another one. Okay, I look over here and I think to myself, this is a pentagon, and if I look back in my notes, a pentagon has to add up to 540 degrees. So if I added up all of these together, I would realize that we have 95 plus 135 plus 80 plus 100. We currently have a 410. So if I did 540 minus that 410, I would realize I have 130 degrees left. So I'll fill that in here by putting in 130 degrees. And then over here, I notice that the triangle that we have left over would be 95. Okay, and I'm just going to skip the calculator part there, save a little bit of time. And now I need to do a congruence statement. Now I can't do the triangle symbol because they're not triangles, so I'll ignore it. And I'm just going to draw it in order. And I'm going to go J, F, G, H, I. Very important that you go in some type of order. Okay, and I'm going to say that's congruent to, now J is 95, so that means B. F was 135, so that has to be A. G was 80, so E. And then D and C from the same logic. So there is my congruence statement. Okay, once again, you could change the order as long as they match up. So I want you to try this one on your own. Make a congruence statement. See if you can get it right. So we're back. And let's see how we did. So this ends up being 120 here. And this ends up being 60 here. So I'm going to do H, E, F, G. Now, once again, you can do your own order. And I'm going to go H. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. Because they both have 120, I have to make sure the orientation. So if I took this shape and I would turned it, I'd have to make sure the orientation stayed right. Okay? So, since I did H, which is the bottom left below here, that means that has to be P. And then it would go M, N, O. Okay, and there's lots of different orders for that. If you're concerned about that, call me over and I'll help out. So let's move on to the other piece of congruence. If we're told that things are congruent to each other, here we're told that A, B, C, D is congruent to E, F, G, H, making sure everything matches up. So A matches up with E, and so on and so forth. But we have variables built in here, and we need to figure out what those all are. So I'm going to find X first. Now I know side AB, here A to B is going to be congruent to E to F, which is right there. So I know that 2X is going to be equal to 8, because that and that side are going to be equal to each other. Well, now I have 2 times X right here, and I need to figure out how to get the X by itself. Well, since those are multiplied, I'm going to divide. And now I know that X is equal to 4. But yet there's another variable. Here I see Z. And so I think to myself, DA would be that to that, so it'd have to be HE, which is right here. So Z plus 6 is going to be equal to 16. Therefore, these are added, so I have to subtract. And it turns out that Z is equal to 10. And we continue. We're looking here for Y. I know that FG will be congruent to BC. So 16 is equal to 4Y. So now I have to divide by 4 because that's in front of the Y. And I get 4 is equal to Y. And then last but not least, we have C plus 2 is going to be congruent to 4. Whoops. C plus 2. So now I have to subtract by 2. And I get C is equal to 2. If I wanted to check my work, all I would simply have to do is plug each of these in and make sure they matched up. So if I went 2 times 4, that would give me 8, which is what I wanted. And if I did Z, or 10 plus 6, that's 16, which is what I wanted, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'd like you to try this one here. We have triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle DCE. See if you can get it figured out. So I'm assuming you gave that one a try. Now let's figure out what the answer is. So if we're looking, I'm going to look for A first. Okay? So I'm going to think to myself that 2A, whoops, push the wrong button here. 2A is going to be equal to xy. So x to y is going to be d to c. So 2A is equal to 4. So now I have to divide by 2, and A is equal to 2. Then I look here and I think f plus 3 is going to be equal to yz is going to be ce, so 8. So then I subtract 3, and I get f is equal to 5. And last but not least, we have 6h is equal to 12. I divide by 6, and I divide by 6, so I get h is equal to 2. There you go. Here's your assignment. 8 through 14 is 7 problems, so you need to get 6 of the 7 right. 1 through 7 is 6, so you need to get 6 right there as well. All right, thanks.